Great.
Hey, it's Prodromou. I'm here with my friend Tim Salapek, and we're talking about the Epic Encore because Tim and I grew up together, literally. We went to middle school together in high school. Did some things in high school we were not too proud of. Don't tell our parents, right?
Well, we didn't go to jail, so that's a good
Right.
thing.
We had a good time. And we've been friends since, gosh, forever, the early 70s.
Yeah,
And we've
yeah,
had parallel careers, I think. We both were in technology and, it was feast or famine for us. And I don't know, Tim, you want to share some of your career moves?
sure. Yeah, as with Ted, I went to the same university, but I was at a different campus than him. And then after we were at University of Pittsburgh, I went off to an engineering school, two of them, and one got my certifications in computer programming, and then the other one was electrical engineering, telecommunications engineering. And from there, I jumped into the technology realm and I worked for a aerospace company that was based headquartered in Cleveland, but based most of it was in the West Coast. And I worked in their data centers on their mainframe systems, and they gave me leeway to learn as much as I could. And so I worked a lot and learned a lot, went to a lot of training classes with IBM and learned how to program their mainframes, maintain their networking equipment, that type of thing. And then I decided after the company was selling off the division that I was in, I was going to move into telecom. And believe it or not, I filled out a application in Network World magazine, and I was hired by a high-tech company in Research Triangle Park, and moved from a little small town in upstate New York to North Carolina, and I did almost 15 years with the technology company there, and it was the heyday of telecom. So I worked for a company that's very progressive, allowed their engineers, their managers to make their own decisions because they were doing so well. And if you had a good business idea, they let you run with it.
Yeah.
And
Back in the day when it was like Wild West. I remember
it,
Network World Magazine. That's how we learned all about networking.
it exactly,
It would come out
yeah,
like once a month, and like this is all you could learn. There was no
yeah.
internet.
Oh, it's great. I mean, I worked with this. I was a product engineer developing new products in telecom and testing them, and then working with marketing to package them and put them out in the marketplace. And this was pre Ethernet
Yeah.
that was available everywhere, internet available everywhere. And we used what was called Switch 56 digital communications, where you took digital communication phone lines, married them together to get the bandwidth you needed, and build networks that way. And one of my funnest projects, I worked with the U.S. Senate, and they were having trouble with their network connectivity and everything. So I flew up to Washington, D.C. A couple times, and they would lead me into the Russell Senate building. And at the time, I had no top clearance, security clearances,
Right.
but they'd lead me in the front door. I'd go through the scanners and everything, had a few things with me, and they'd take me downstairs in the basement. You'd go down this escalator, and that's where the senators would take the escalator down and catch the underground train to go vote at the Capitol.
Right.
Well, I went down the escalators and hung a hard right, and they took me out through the parking garage where there was a bunker. And in the bunker was all their communications and computer equipment.
Wow.
So I got to work on their equipment there. At the time, it was Atlantic Bell was running their networks for them, but they couldn't figure out what was going on. And because it was my product, they brought me in as the specialist. Long story short, it was a class of service profile programming issue, and the senators couldn't do international data transfers and that type of thing.
Hmm.
So I was joking at the time. This was in Ronald Reagan era, and George H. Bush was the vice president. And I said, "Give me the president's profile and let me take what they have on that, and I'll map it into the senators' data profiles, and we'll see how that works." And I said, because I think it's something in the programming in the class of service.
Yeah.
And they covered up all the screen on the computer that where the profile was. And they said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Cut this, map it into this." And we tried it and it worked. And so that was it was an easy fix. It only took in those days, it only took me about an hour or two to fix it. And then at the end, I said, "So, whose profile did you let me use?" And they said it was George H's profile. And I
Wow.
said, "Perfect, perfect." So that is as close as top security as I worked on in telecom. But just like you, Ted, I I was in telecom a lot. I did a couple startup companies in technology, and three out of the five took off pretty well, and it was
Yeah.
fun to work with them. And then um, I decided it was, well, prior to leaving Nortel Networks, I worked on a couple other high profile technology projects. One was with NASA Jet Propulsion Labs out in Pasadena,
Hmm.
and this is in 1994, and believe it or not, in 1994, we had a thing that people were looking at and talking about called telecommuting. And
Right.
we all do it today, right?
Yeah.
And NASA wanted to send their engineers home to work for 2 or 3 days a week back then.
Wow.
So I was working with them on a design, and another engineer from Pac Bell at the time, working with me, was a gentleman by the name of Scott Adams. And Scott Adams, if
Wow.
you know the name, he's Dilbert. He wrote the Dilbert cartoon. So
Yeah.
about 8 months into our project, he disappeared because he went full freelance at Dilbert.
He did okay too.
But during that project, we had 50 engineers doing occasional work from home, and we were tweaking the application on their computer screens at home. It was a share screen application like remote eyes, remote hands,
Yeah.
and they could run their servers on the Voyager program. And lo and behold, the 1994 earthquake hit.
Oh, yeah.
So we had to spin up NASA from 50 engineers to close to 300 to allow them to work from home and run the Voyager space program from home.
Wow.
So that was a great program. Another, a quick one was I had the opportunity. I learned more about telecom, fiber optics, wave division multiplexing, that type of thing. And I engineered and designed the first statewide fiber optic network for Alaska. So I was commuting there for 2 years, running a project up there and then cutting over the network to allow voice, data, and video all to ride on the same network at the same time. So that was
Yeah.
pretty exciting. Yeah,
Yeah, that was like for the 20 years, 1980s and 90s, we had to really band-aid stuff together because it wasn't plug and play like today.
right.
So we had to be creative and just couldn't do certain things because the technology wasn't there, but we made stuff
Exactly.
work that shouldn't have worked.
Yeah, you're right. It's funny. While I was at Nortel, they allowed me to build a business unit to put internet in all the small telephone companies in the United States. So I put together a Skunkworks team and we did that. And then I left Nortel in the night in no, it was 2000. And I did some startups and whatnot. And then oh gosh, it was in 2006, I think, or five, Nortel called me up and they said, "Hey, we want to start a cloud business. And we know you're good at doing startups. Would you come and work with us on building a cloud offering where we have applications and services based around telecom, call center, contact center, that type of thing. And we're going to sell it to other phone companies like AT&T, at the time Sprint,
Right.
and some smaller ones. Would you do that? And I said, sure. So started that cloud business, and lo and behold, if you knew the history of Nortel, they went unbelievably bad as far as business practices, and they tanked and went Chapter 11.
Yeah.
So my deal there was to take the business unit that we just built, cloud, and we built it on the East Coast and the West Coast of North America, and we built it in Europe as well. And I had to downsize that, keep it alive, and then I worked the acquisition into Avaya, and Avaya bought us.
Yeah.
And
I remember
you know,
that.
had to learn new cultures with Avaya and work with them. And after 2 years of that, I decided it was time to look around. And that's when I voluntarily took a leave, and I went off and started another cloud business in a integration company that's based out of Boston, but they were focused on using all Cisco. So I
Right.
got to learn Cisco technology and business practices and take what they had and integrate it into this other company's model and build out a cloud business. And it was a global cloud business, but primarily we focused on North America, but we had subsidiaries that were in Europe that we brought in as well. But we built out cloud for state governments, for education, private sector, and had a great team of engineers that I had the opportunity to work with and bring them up online as far as business, and they taught me all the nuances of the new technology we were integrating.
Yeah.
So it was a win-win. I got to learn new technology, they got to learn business practices. And so that was a fun run. The only thing I can say, and Chad, you're in California, is I had to fly to California unexpectedly one day because my engineers, this was before we had AI and before we had uh, self-testing algorithms of new programming languages. And my guys decided they needed to upgrade the edge routers for California.
Hmm.
And so it was late, it's late at night. It was, I can say it was 10:50 California time, and it was on the largest night of the Powerball drawing for the state of California.
Oh, I remember that.
And it's and my guys loaded the new code, swacked it over onto the active side of the core or the edge routers, and they crashed the California lottery network 10 minutes before the largest Powerball drawing they ever had. Oh, oh my God.
Yeah.
We went into, reaction firefighting mode and got it back up online before the drawing. But literally 2 days later, I had to fly out and meet with the state lottery commission and explain what really went wrong
Oh
and
God.
how we were going to circumvent it in the, going forward, that type of thing. So no matter how good you get your team, you can have the best. There's always opportunity or a percentage that you may not work 100% of the time.
Yeah.
It's getting better, and I'm excited about AI. I've actually used it on one of the books I've written, and I use it daily just to keep up with it.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about what it's going to do for medicine, what it's going to do for technology. Um, you know, so if I had to say to anybody our age, is in our realm, it's just like the surfer. You're only as good as the wave you're going to catch.
Yeah.
So find the best waves and enjoy them, because that's what it is. That's the way it is in the
They
industry.
don't last long anymore. Huh?
They do not.
Said
No.
IBM and Cisco used to be hardware companies. IBM mainframes, PCs. They don't do that
Right.
anymore. Cisco
Right.
is now going to be a security company, they announced.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
hardware is like, well, we need the hardware, but everything's changing so fast. It's more software based.
Oh, it at every spectrum of the technology realm it is. I
Yeah,
mean, in telecom, the hardware's, it's a necessity, but they'll look for anybody's hardware that meets their requirements as long as it can run the code they want to put on it.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. That, when I left the telecom world, I decided I got out of cloud for a while and I went into healthcare technology and how to
Mhm.
integrate middleware software platforms in healthcare with all the different technologies, the bedside smart beds, the monitors, the nurses stations, all that, and how to make it all work together. So that was another fun element in my career, I enjoyed working and learning about because
Yeah.
it was a whole new twist from where I came, just being in, you know, network routing and that type of thing. You had to worry about what you were going to do in the healthcare environment and improve that.
I like what you said about the waves, catch the wave, because when we first started, the waves lasted 5 or 10 years. Now it seems
Yeah.
like 5 or 10 minutes.
Oh yeah. I mean, and you know, the other thing is do what makes your do what you really enjoy doing. And I've been fired many times and I've left on my own accord as well. But you know, just recently I was in a technology company. It was infrastructure, and I came in and they wanted me to run this business unit, and I put all the spreadsheets together, and it took me a couple months to figure out how it was all working, and we were bleeding terribly.
Yeah.
And I took it to the executive staff, and the CEO didn't like to see the numbers that I, showed him, and he said, you're just too expensive for us. We're going to close the whole program down.
Yeah.
So sometimes, you try to do good, but it ends up that it's, you're shooting yourself in the foot doing it. But, it's just what business is today.
You sound like me. I kind of, at first, when I had layoffs or, okay, we're eliminating your position, you feel devastated and you take it personally. After the third or fourth time, it's kind of like, oh, well, okay, what's that? What's next?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I mean, the day the CEO fired me, um, my boss called me because the CEO fired me around his back, and my boss was the senior vice president of the company, and he apologized profusely. And I said, you know, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
These things happen. It's, I just like you, Ted, my first layoff, I was devastated. But as you get the experience and you work in the industry, you understand that it's inevitable. It could happen to you today, tomorrow, or 6 months from now, or a year, or whatever. But it could happen.
Market conditions are changing so fast, you never know what's coming next. So
Right.
just keep
Right.
learning, be positive. That's all
Yep.
we can do.
That's all you can do. Yeah.
That's one of the things I talk to a lot of people, and when I help them with their LinkedIn, I say you got to build long-term relationships. Remember our Rolodex. So the
Right.
old Rolodex, if your card was in my Rolodex, I trusted you.
Right. Right.
So you need to have those kind of relationships where you can go to people. And I have people call me 10 or 20 years later, literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Would
kids
you say
today that I try
now?
to help with LinkedIn, they don't want to take time to build relationships. They're like, oh no, I got to make a sale. Like,
Right. Yeah, they're living for the moment versus long term. And
yeah,
ultimately that's gonna, that bites you.
yeah,
Yeah.
it does.
Would you say what's the most used Rolodex today?
LinkedIn is your
Yeah.
Rolodex if you treat
Yeah.
it like a Rolodex.
Yeah. That's what I would say as well. And you're an expert on LinkedIn, and you probably have thousands and thousands of followers. And, I have several thousand, but there's only a small bundle that they're my real go-to people when I want to bounce something off of them, a new opportunity or a new technology, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I have like 25,000 friends. But maybe there's like 50 people that I really have a go-to relationship with anymore.
Right, right.
Because
Yeah.
that's kind of what we're running into now. All of our contacts are retiring. So a lot of my ins to corporate accounts have retired.
Yes,
So that well is dried up.
it is indeed. It is indeed.
So that's
Yeah.
why we're doing Epic Encore now.
The
My new wave.
new wave. Well, you've got to go somewhere, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Well, Tim,
Well,
it's been great catching up with you.
it was good talking with you, and stay in touch. If you ever get east, come see us. And we're planning a trip sometime, you know, in the next 3 months, hopefully to California again.
You gotta
Yeah.
keep traveling. Stay
Yep.
engaged.
You got to stay engaged. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Tim.
Cool.